Let me turn to the third question. So at the end of the essay, you discuss the multiverse hypothesis, that there are numerous universes corresponding to the numerous ways the cosmic constants could be. And I think that's probably the most difficult part of the essay, because you think that the multiverse hypothesis is not a rival explanation to the theistic hypothesis, but nonetheless, it could overturn the theistic hypothesis. If we had independent reason to believe that there were multiple universes, then you think this somehow draws the sting from the fine tuning argument. And obviously that's difficult because, I mean, the point is difficult because normally we think, okay, well, if you've got one hypothesis, we've got some data and we've got one hypothesis and we're thinking, well, maybe this hypothesis is true because it provides, or would provide if true, a good explanation of the data, and then someone comes along with another hypothesis and we end up preferring that other hypothesis, then that's because, or that can only be because, that hypothesis offers a superior explanation of the data or the evidence than the first hypothesis. But that's not the way you're thinking of it. So could you just say a bit more about that?
Right. So I mean, I set this essay up to try to avoid technical issues of probability. There would be a more technical answer in terms of probabilities. But thinking in terms of explanation, we can ask, what do we need an explanation for? If we're assuming that there's just one universe, then naturally we're asking why are things in the one universe, just as they are, supporting life. If we suppose that there's lots of universes, there's two questions we could ask. We could ask, why is there life at all, period, within the multiverse? Or we could ask, concerning our life here, why is there life in our universe? Concerning the question, why is there life, period, in the multiverse, it seems we do have, the fact that there is a multiverse does provide something of a good explanation of that, because life is just what you expect if the multiverse is large enough. It can just come about by accident. If there's lots of opportunities for life to arise, we should expect there to be life somewhere. I don't think it answers the question, why is there life here? I don't think what's going on in other universes has relevance to questions we ask locally about this universe. But nevertheless, it seems to reduce the urgency of the question, because once we have a satisfying answer to the question, why is there life somewhere in the multiverse, the question, why is it here, it doesn't seem to be such an urgent question. You think it's more like a lottery case where you think, well, someone was going to win the lottery. The fact that it was this person rather than that person doesn't feel like the sort of thing that you really need some special explanation of that. And if there's a large multiverse, it's extremely likely that one of them is going to meet the conditions for life. The question, why was it us, doesn't have that. It was going to be one of them, could have been any of them, might as well be us.
Last question. So most people, you may be an exception. I believe you are a theist of some stripe. So you may be an exception to this since you wrote the essay, but most people don't believe in God because they've read your paper, and neither do they believe in God because they know anything about the fine tuning argument. Right? There are many people who believe in God who haven't the foggiest notion of fine tuning. And presumably, if there really is a God, many of these people know that there is a God. I mean, they're not just guessing. That would be like an amazing fluke. How come they're all right? So assuming there is a God, there must be some good reasons to think that God exists independently of the fine-tuning argument, because here are these people, they know that God exists, but they don't know anything about the fine-tuning argument. So doesn't that mean that if the fine-tuning argument works and there really is a God, then it's in a way redundant? We somehow didn't need it in the first place. There have to be other ways of knowing that God exists other than the fine-tuning argument.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps that's right. Maybe that's true of a lot of philosophical arguments. Like, you know, arguments for an external world or other minds and so forth. You think, or that there's a past, or that the sun is going to rise tomorrow. We know these things perfectly well, and we don't need philosophical arguments. So, hey, I have a firm conviction that there's a laptop in front of me. My conviction far outstrips my confidence in any philosophical argument I can give that there's a laptop before me. I just think I know it in a more direct way, not via some inference or anything. For people who enjoy that sort of conviction, there is a sense in which such arguments are redundant. I don't feel I need them. Of course, there's those who, for one reason or other, don't enjoy that sort of conviction, whether they're atheists or agnostics, or just believers, like many of us who are sort of believers but harbor a lot of doubts. And so sort of the whole question still remains an open question. So for those of us who are somewhere in between, you know, speculating about these things still has some interest in that way. It might not take us very far, like most philosophical arguments. They don't end up producing a whole lot of conviction, but they're, insofar as you're pondering such questions, it seems these are important sort of fine-tuning as one of the sort of questions you should, issues you should attend to. But even if you're one of these people who enjoys a kind of conviction, like the conviction I have that there's a laptop before me, there is, of course, this long philosophical tradition of getting into a skeptical frame of mind, maybe the extreme case being Descartes, of going back and trying to start from a very impoverished position and seeing, can you work your way from there to a richer view of yourself and your surroundings. And the answer might be, well, it's very difficult. But I think there's considerable philosophical interest in these attempts. So I think there is philosophical interest in asking skeptical questions like, is there a laptop before me? Are there other minds? And seeing how far you can go in starting from a more impoverished position of saying, well, here's some data about your behavior and the noises you're making. Can I make a case, philosophical case from that to the conclusion that you have a mind? Maybe the, you know, contemplating fine-tuning arguments is a similar kind of philosophical exercise.
Excellent. Well, you just raised a few topics that we're going to talk about later in the term. So that was very appropriate. Knowledge of other minds and Descartes in the Meditations. So you do say at the end of the essay that I've hardly scratched the surface of the possible defenses, rebuttals, and replies. I mean, we've hardly scratched the surface of your rich essay. So thanks again. That was terrific. Thank you.